I sat in the boardroom I helped design, watching my younger sister, Emma, announce my termination to the entire board. Her voice was cold and professional as she declared my services no longer required, demanding I clear my office by tomorrow. The room fell silent. Everyone expected tears, anger, or pleading. Instead, I started laughing. Not a bitter laugh, but genuine amusement. Because what Emma didn't know was that I had been planning for this moment for months, and tomorrow morning would indeed be very interesting. The laughter bubbling up from my chest wasn't hysteria or shock. It was pure satisfaction because I knew something Emma didn't. But let me back up 6 months to explain how we got here. My name is Shari Morrison, and I built Morrison Family Enterprises from a struggling hardware store into a multi-million-dollar home improvement empire over 8 years. When our grandfather left us that tiny shop in downtown Portland, Oregon, it was hemorrhaging money and had 3 employees who showed up when they felt like it. I was 20 years old, fresh out of community college with a business degree, and determined to prove myself worthy of the family legacy. I redesigned every system from inventory management to customer service protocols. I negotiated contracts with suppliers who had written us off as a lost cause. I hired employees who shared my vision of creating something extraordinary from humble beginnings. I worked 16-hour days, slept on the office couch during busy seasons, and treated every customer interaction as an opportunity to build lasting relationships. The transformation was remarkable. Within 3 years, we had expanded to 4 locations across the Pacific Northwest. By year 5, we were the preferred contractor supplier for major residential developments throughout Oregon and southern Washington. Our annual revenue grew from $200,000 to over $15 million. I had turned a failing family business into a regional powerhouse. Throughout this growth, my father, Harold, always promised the business would belong to both his daughters equally when he retired. Emma was pursuing her MBA at Stanford during most of this expansion period. She would visit during holidays and summer breaks, offering suggestions based on her textbook knowledge, but she never worked in the trenches like I did. She never negotiated with difficult suppliers at 5 in the morning or calmed down angry contractors whose deliveries were delayed by weather. Emma returned from Stanford 6 months ago with her freshly minted degree and immediately began questioning every decision I made. She suggested we needed more data-driven approaches to customer relationship management. She criticized my practice of taking suppliers out to dinner as inefficient networking. She argued that my personal relationships with clients created dangerous dependencies that could hurt the business if I ever left. At first, I welcomed her input. Having family involved in the business had always been my dream. I assumed her academic training would complement my practical experience perfectly. I created the position of Strategic Development Director specifically for her, giving her authority over long-term planning and new market analysis. I thought we would make an incredible team. Instead, Emma began systematically undermining my authority with subtle comments and strategic memos. She would send emails to our father, questioning my emotional decision-making processes, while copying the entire management team. She scheduled meetings during times when she knew I would be visiting clients, then positioned herself as the only family member consistently available for important discussions. The real turning point came when our father suffered a minor heart attack 3 months ago. While I spent every available moment at the hospital making sure he received proper care and managing his recovery process, Emma was having private conversations with our board members. She convinced the 3 external board members, all longtime family friends, that the company needed professional leadership during this transitional period. Emma painted herself as the objective, analytically minded daughter who could provide stable guidance, while portraying me as too emotionally invested to make rational business decisions. She suggested that my close relationships with employees and suppliers might cloud my judgment about what was best for the company's future. She presented herself as the fresh perspective needed to take Morrison Family Enterprises to the next level. What I discovered later made my blood run cold. While I was sitting in that hospital room holding my father's hand and coordinating with doctors about his treatment plan, Emma called an emergency board meeting. She convinced those 3 external board members that I was cracking under the pressure of our father's health crisis. She presented them with fabricated evidence of my supposed erratic behavior. Emma had doctored emails to make my passionate advocacy for employee benefits look like irrational spending sprees. She took recordings of my conversations with suppliers out of context, making my negotiation tactics sound like personal vendettas. She cherry-picked financial reports to suggest that my relationship-based management style was becoming a liability for the company's growth potential. The board voted Emma in as interim CEO, while our father was sedated and recovering from his cardiac procedure. I discovered this betrayal when I returned from the hospital to find Emma already redecorating the corner office, hanging her Stanford diploma, where my community college certificate had been displayed for 8 years. That was the moment I realized my sister had been planning this takeover far longer than 6 months. The precision of her attack, the documents she had prepared, the relationships she had cultivated with board members during brief holiday visits over the years. This wasn't opportunistic ambition. This was calculated destruction of everything I had built. But Emma made one crucial miscalculation. She assumed I was just a hard-working small-town girl who succeeded through luck and determination. She never bothered to understand the depth of strategic thinking that had gone into building Morrison Family Enterprises. She never realized that someone who could transform a failing hardware store into a regional empire might have anticipated family betrayal and prepared accordingly. The morning after Emma's announcement, I was still chuckling as I packed my personal belongings from the office I had occupied for 8 years. Employees kept stopping by offering awkward condolences and expressing confusion about the sudden change in leadership. Most of them had been hired by me personally and couldn't understand how the person who built this company was being pushed out by someone who had worked here for only 6 months. My assistant Jennifer knocked on the door frame and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. Jennifer had been with Morrison Family Enterprises for 5 years, starting as a receptionist and working her way up to become my right hand in daily operations. She was a 32-year-old single mother who valued stability and had flourished under my mentorship-focused management style. "Shari, I need to show you something," she said quietly, glancing around nervously. "I've been documenting Emma's activities since she arrived, and you need to see what I found." Jennifer pulled out a folder containing printed screenshots and time-stamped security footage. The first image showed Emma meeting with a tall man in an expensive suit at a coffee shop 3 blocks from our office. The timestamp indicated this meeting occurred during what Emma had reported as a graduate school visit to discuss alumni networking opportunities. "That's Bradley Hutchinson," Jennifer explained, CEO of Mega Home Corporation. Mega Home Corp was our biggest competitor, a massive retail chain that had been trying to dominate the Pacific Northwest home improvement market for years. They had approached Morrison Family Enterprises about acquisition twice in the past, and both times I had declined their offers because they wanted to eliminate our personalized service model and convert our locations into generic big box stores. Jennifer showed me additional security footage spanning several months. Emma had met with Bradley Hutchinson at least 6 times during her supposed graduate school visits. The meetings were always in discreet locations, away from areas where Morrison employees might recognize her. In one image, Emma was handing Bradley what appeared to be a thick folder of documents. "There's more." Jennifer continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I've been monitoring the computer access logs like you taught me. Emma has been copying client lists, supplier contracts, and all of our proprietary inventory management processes. She downloads everything to external drives during evening hours, when she thinks nobody is monitoring the systems." The scope of Emma's betrayal was becoming clear. She hadn't returned from Stanford to help grow the family business. She had returned to destroy it from the inside and sell the pieces to our biggest competitor. The strategic positioning, the board manipulation, the timing of her takeover during our father's health crisis. Everything had been carefully orchestrated to maximize her leverage while minimizing my ability to fight back. But Jennifer's most devastating revelation was yet to come. She showed me bank statements indicating that Emma had been systematically redirecting company profits to hidden accounts over the past 4 months. Small amounts at first buried in legitimate-looking consulting fees and administrative expenses, but the total was approaching $200,000. She's been making the company look less profitable than it actually is, Jennifer explained. I think she's setting up the books to justify selling to Mega Home Corp at a fraction of the true value. The final piece of evidence made my heart pound with rage. Jennifer had discovered that Emma had convinced our father to sign several documents while he was heavily medicated during his recovery period. These documents gave Emma power of attorney over Harold's business decisions and authorized her to make temporary operational adjustments without board approval. Even worse, Emma had been intercepting my phone calls to the rehabilitation center where our father was recovering. She told the staff that I was too stressed and emotionally unstable to visit, and that my presence might hinder his recovery process. Our father had been asking about me every day, wondering why his dedicated daughter had seemingly abandoned him during his time of need. Emma had isolated him completely, feeding him a steady stream of lies about my supposed breakdown and inability to handle business responsibilities. She convinced him that signing those documents was the only way to protect the company he had trusted me to build. As I processed the magnitude of Emma's deception, that strange laughter returned, because hidden in Jennifer's folder was something Emma didn't know existed. 3 years ago, when our father had his first mild health scare, I had convinced him to restructure Morrison Family Enterprises' legal organization for tax and liability protection purposes. Buried in those complex restructuring documents was a provision that Emma had never bothered to read carefully. Any sale or transfer of Morrison Family Enterprises exceeding 25% of the company's value required unanimous approval from all family members with ownership stakes. Emma's power of attorney gave her authority over operational decisions, but it couldn't override the fundamental ownership structure I had insisted on implementing. Emma thought she had played the perfect game, but she had missed the most important rule. I hadn't just built Morrison Family Enterprises through hard work and relationship building. I had protected it through careful legal planning, because I knew that family businesses face their greatest threats from within. The laughter that had started in that boardroom was growing stronger because I realized Emma had handed me the perfect opportunity to prove which sister truly understood business strategy. I drove to Willow Creek Rehabilitation Center with Jennifer's evidence folder on the passenger seat, my heart racing with anticipation and anxiety about seeing my father. The 40-minute drive through the Columbia River Gorge gave me time to plan exactly how to present Emma's betrayal without overwhelming him during his recovery process. Harold Morrison was sitting in the sunroom when I arrived, reading a newspaper and looking far healthier than I had expected. His color was good, his movements were steady, and his eyes were sharp with the intelligence that had built our family's original hardware business 40 years ago. When he saw me walking toward him, his face lit up with relief and confusion. "Shari, where have you been, sweetheart? Emma said you were too busy with work transitions to visit, but I've been asking about you every day." The pain in his voice nearly broke my resolve. My father had been wondering why his daughter had abandoned him, never knowing that Emma had been systematically blocking my attempts to maintain contact. I sat down next to him and took his weathered hands in mine. "Dad, Emma has been lying to you about everything. I've been trying to visit every day, but she told the staff I was having emotional problems and shouldn't be allowed to see you. I need to show you something that's going to be very difficult to hear." I opened Jennifer's folder and began walking him through the evidence methodically. The security footage of Emma meeting with Bradley Hutchinson, the financial records showing diverted company funds, the computer logs proving she had stolen proprietary information and client lists, the timeline of her manipulation during his hospitalization. Harold's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to a cold fury I had rarely seen from him. As a businessman who had built his company through handshake deals and personal integrity, the depth of Emma's deception was personally devastating. But what hurt him most was realizing how she had manipulated his vulnerability during his health crisis. She used my medication and recovery period to get those documents signed, he said quietly. I remember feeling confused about some of the paperwork, but she assured me it was just routine protection for the company. I trusted her because she's my daughter. We spent an hour reviewing every detail of Emma's scheme. Harold immediately called his lawyer to begin legal proceedings to revoke Emma's power of attorney and challenge any documents signed under duress. But we both knew that unraveling Emma's manipulations would take time we might not have. Just as we were discussing our options, Emma arrived at the rehabilitation center with 2 security guards in tow. She burst into the sunroom with the confidence of someone who believed she held all the advantages. "Shari, you're not supposed to be here," she announced loudly, drawing attention from other patients and visitors. "The medical staff has clear instructions about your restricted access due to your recent emotional instability." Emma turned to the security guards and pointed at me dramatically. "This woman is harassing our sick father against medical advice. She's been causing family disruptions that could harm his recovery process." The guards looked uncertain, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding before them. One of them, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked at Harold for guidance about how to proceed. "These 2 ladies claim to be your daughters, sir. Do you want us to escort either of them out?" Harold stood up slowly, his full height and natural authority, commanding the room despite his recent health challenges. "These are indeed both my daughters, but the only person who should be escorted out is the one who has been lying to medical staff and manipulating legal documents while I was recovering from heart surgery." Emma's confident expression faltered as she realized our father was fully aware of her deception. But she recovered quickly, pulling out her phone and threatening to call the police. "Dad, Shari has obviously filled your head with paranoid fantasies. She's been acting erratically for months, making emotional decisions that threaten the business. I have documentation of her unstable behavior from multiple board members." That was when Emma revealed the full scope of her preparations. She had already transferred key company assets to subsidiary companies she controlled personally. The warehouse lease, the supplier relationships, even the company vehicles had been moved into entities that existed outside Harold's direct authority. "I've already signed preliminary agreements with Mega Home Corporation," Emma announced triumphantly. "The sale will close in 2 weeks regardless of what family drama you try to create here." Emma's lawyer, who had been waiting in the hallway, entered with a briefcase full of documents. He was a sharp-faced man in his 50s who specialized in hostile corporate takeovers. He spread papers across the sunroom table, showing transfer agreements, asset assignments, and purchase contracts that Emma had been executing while isolating our father from business decisions. But Emma's most devastating move was yet to come. She revealed that she had convinced the bank to call in Morrison Family Enterprises' line of credit, early claiming the business was financially unstable under current management disputes. This would force Harold to either accept Emma's sale to Mega Home Corp or watch the company go bankrupt within 30 days. "I've been feeding the bank negative financial projections and stability concerns for the past 2 months, Emma explained with cold satisfaction. They're convinced that family conflict is making Morrison Family Enterprises a risky investment. Emma believed she had achieved the perfect checkmate: sell to Mega Home Corp and receive a massive consulting fee, or watch everything collapse and blame the destruction on family infighting. Either way, she would walk away with substantial financial gain, while positioning herself as the daughter who tried to save the business from emotional chaos. Harold looked defeated for the first time since I had arrived. The complexity of Emma's financial manipulations, the legal documents, the bank pressure, and the compressed timeline seemed overwhelming for a man still recovering from major medical treatment. But I was still smiling because Emma had made the same mistake that overconfident people always make. She had assumed that good intentions and hard work couldn't compete with sophisticated manipulation and strategic planning. "Emma," I said calmly, "you've put together an impressive scheme, but you forgot to check one important detail before you started moving those company assets around." That evening, I returned to my small apartment overlooking the Willamette River and made a series of phone calls that I had been preparing to make for months. The first call went to Marcus Rodriguez, the owner of Northwest Building Supply, our largest inventory provider. Marcus, it's Shari Morrison. I think it's time we activated those contingency agreements we discussed last year. About time, Marcus replied with evident relief. Emma's been trying to renegotiate our contracts for the past month, but she doesn't understand how our business relationship actually works. Should I proceed with the transition? Yes, please implement the change effective immediately. What Emma didn't know was that 3 years ago, I had begun negotiating exclusive distributor agreements that were tied to me personally, rather than to Morrison Family Enterprises. When Marcus and I had started working together 8 years ago, his company was struggling to compete with larger suppliers. I had given Northwest Building Supply their first major contract when other businesses considered them too small and unreliable. Over the years, as Morrison Family Enterprises grew into a major customer, I had helped Marcus expand his operations and improve his delivery systems. Our business relationship had evolved into a genuine partnership based on mutual support and shared success. When I explained my concerns about potential family conflicts affecting the business, Marcus agreed to structure our agreements in a way that protected both our companies. The contracts were buried in routine paperwork and looked like standard vendor agreements to casual observers. But the fine print specified that Northwest Building Supply's exclusive pricing and priority delivery commitments were contingent on my personal involvement in purchasing decisions. Without these relationships, Morrison Family Enterprises would lose access to 80% of its inventory sources at competitive prices. Similar agreements existed with 4 other major suppliers. I had spent years building personal relationships that went beyond simple business transactions. I knew the names of their children, celebrated their business victories, and supported them during difficult periods. Emma saw these relationships as inefficient networking, but they were actually the foundation of Morrison's competitive advantages. My next series of calls went to the 6 employees Emma had terminated for being too loyal to previous management. I arranged to meet them at Riverside Coffee House, a small cafe where we had often gathered for informal team meetings over the years. Jennifer was already waiting when I arrived, along with Tommy Chen, our warehouse manager Linda Park, our customer service director Carlos Mendoza, our installation supervisor Kate Sullivan, our accounting specialist, and David Brown, our regional sales coordinator. These were the employees who had grown with the company and understood its values most deeply. I know Emma's termination came as a shock. I began, but I want you to know I've been preparing for this possibility. I've been contributing to a separate fund for years to protect loyal employees during potential ownership transitions. I explained that I had already secured positions for all of them at a new company I had been quietly establishing. Morrison Family Enterprises 2.0 would offer them better compensation packages, employee ownership opportunities, and the collaborative management style they had thrived under for years. These employees possessed intimate knowledge of Morrison's operations, client relationships, and industry contacts. They knew which contractors preferred specific product lines, which suppliers offered the best seasonal pricing, and which installation techniques produced the highest customer satisfaction ratings. Emma had terminated them, assuming their knowledge belonged to the company, but their expertise was actually based on years of personal experience and relationship building. There's something else Emma doesn't know about. I continued pulling out a manila folder. I own the warehouse property that Morrison Family Enterprises operates from. 3 years ago, during our father's first health scare, I had convinced him to sell the warehouse to me personally for tax advantages, then lease it back to the company at favorable rates. The arrangement reduced Morrison's property tax burden while giving me a tangible asset that would appreciate over time. Emma's sale to Megahome Corp included the business operations inventory and client relationships, but it didn't include the physical facilities. The lease agreement contained a clause allowing me to terminate the arrangement if ownership of Morrison changed hands without my approval. Without warehouse space, Mega Home Corp would be purchasing a business that couldn't fulfill orders or store inventory. The final piece of my preparation involved client relationships that Emma had consistently undervalued. I had discovered that several of Morrison's largest commercial clients had included personal preference clauses in their contracts that voided the agreements if key personnel left the company. These clauses had been added at the client's request because they valued the personal relationships and service quality I had established over years of collaboration. Morrison Family Enterprises represented 40% of their annual purchasing volume, but their loyalty was tied to trust in my judgment and commitment to their success. I've been developing a comprehensive business plan for 18 months, I explained to my former colleagues. I anticipated Emma might try something like this, so I secured initial funding from several of Morrison's clients who were frustrated with her recent service changes. The funding came from 3 major commercial contractors who'd been increasingly concerned about Emma's emphasis on standardized pricing over customized service packages. They had approached me privately about potentially partnering on a new venture that would prioritize their specific needs and long-term relationships. But the most satisfying element of my preparation was something I hadn't shared with anyone except our family lawyer. Harold had secretly given me his blessing and financial backing for this competing venture 6 months ago, before Emma's manipulation had begun in earnest. During one of our regular dinner conversations, Harold had expressed concerns about Emma's business philosophy and its potential impact on the company culture we had built together. He had quietly transferred funds to support my independent planning, recognizing that Morrison Family Enterprises might need an alternative future if Emma's approach proved destructive. "Your sister understands business theory," Harold had told me, "but you understand business relationships. If she ever tries to prioritize profit over people, the company will need someone who remembers what made us successful." As I finished explaining the situation to my former colleagues, I realized Emma was about to discover that her perfect plan had been built on a foundation of assumptions that were completely wrong. Emma discovered my countermoves when she arrived at my apartment at 11:30 that night, her usual composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway with her hair disheveled and her designer suit wrinkled from a day of crisis management. "Shari, we need to talk," she demanded, pushing past me into my living room. "What did you do to the supplier contracts?" I gestured toward the coffee table where I had been calmly packing boxes labeled Morrison 2.0 with files and personal items. The sight of those boxes seemed to intensify Emma's agitation as the reality of her situation became clear. "I activated some business relationships that you didn't know existed," I replied simply. "Marcus Rodriguez called you today, didn't he?" Emma's face flushed with anger and frustration. "He terminated our exclusive supplier agreement, effective immediately. He claimed some clause about personnel changes that I've never seen before. Bradley Hutchinson is threatening to withdraw from the purchase if we can't guarantee consistent inventory sources." The foundation of Emma's Mega Home Corp deal was crumbling because she had never understood how Morrison Family Enterprises actually operated. She had focused on financial statements and organizational charts while ignoring the personal relationships that made everything function smoothly. "4 other suppliers have terminated their agreements as well." Emma continued pacing around my small living room. "Our delivery commitments for the next 6 months are worthless without reliable inventory sources. Bradley's lawyers are saying the business assets aren't what we represented in our initial negotiations." Emma's consulting fee was disappearing along with the sale itself. She had positioned herself to receive $2 million for facilitating the Mega Home Corp acquisition, but that payment was contingent on delivering a complete operational package. Without the warehouse supplier relationships and key personnel, Morrison Family Enterprises was just a collection of client lists and equipment that any competent competitor could replicate within months. But Emma's desperation was about to drive her to even more destructive measures. She revealed that she was planning to sue me for theft of company assets and violation of non-compete agreements that didn't actually exist. "You deliberately sabotaged the business to serve your own interests," she accused. "I have documentation of your discussions with suppliers and employees that proves you were planning corporate sabotage." Emma threatened to release edited versions of recorded conversations that would make my relationship-building efforts look like a conspiracy to undermine Morrison Family Enterprises. She claimed she could destroy my reputation in the industry and prevent me from working with any major suppliers or contractors in the Pacific Northwest. "You have 24 hours to abandon this competing business nonsense and publicly support the Mega Home Corp sale," Emma demanded. "If you don't cooperate, I'll make sure everyone in this industry knows you're a disloyal family member who destroys businesses for personal gain." Her nuclear option was designed to force me into submission through reputational destruction and legal intimidation. Emma believed that small-town business relationships couldn't survive sophisticated character assassination campaigns backed by corporate legal resources. But Emma's threats were interrupted by a phone call that changed everything. Harold was back in the hospital with chest pains triggered by stress from our family conflict. Emma immediately seized on this development as ammunition for her campaign against me. "Look what your selfish ambitions are doing to our father," she said with theatrical concern. "Your business sabotage is literally killing him. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that your greed and vindictiveness destroyed both the family business and our father's health." Emma positioned herself as the daughter trying to save both the business and their father's life, while I was painted as the selfish sibling whose personal ambitions took priority over family welfare. She planned to use Harold's hospitalization to pressure the board and remaining employees into supporting her version of events. The irony was devastating. Emma's own manipulation and deception had created the stress that triggered our father's health crisis, but she was prepared to blame me for the consequences of her actions. Her willingness to exploit Harold's medical emergency for strategic advantage revealed a level of callousness that I had never imagined possible. But Emma's calculated cruelty was about to backfire in a way she couldn't possibly anticipate. What she didn't know was that Harold had been documenting her behavior since discovering her initial betrayal. Harold's lawyer arrived at my apartment 20 minutes after Emma's departure, carrying a briefcase full of recorded conversations that would completely destroy her narrative. Harold had been secretly recording all of Emma's visits and phone calls since learning about her deception 3 days earlier. Emma's own words captured in clear digital audio revealed her admissions of financial manipulation, her contempt for our father's judgment, and her explicit plans to profit from the family business's destruction. Even more damaging, the recordings included her conversations with Bradley Hutchinson, discussing strategies for minimizing the purchase price through manufactured financial instability. "Your father wanted you to have these tonight," the lawyer explained. "He said Emma's threats would probably escalate quickly once she realized her position was untenable." The recordings also revealed that Harold had been working with me on Morrison 2.0's business plan as a way to preserve the family legacy away from Emma's destructive influence. He had been pretending to be more incapacitated than he actually was, giving Emma enough rope to hang herself while protecting the evidence needed to expose her schemes. Emma had spent months believing she was manipulating a vulnerable old man, never realizing that Harold was fully aware of her activities and building a comprehensive case against her. Her perfect plan had been unraveling from the beginning because she had underestimated both her father's intelligence and my strategic preparation. The emergency board meeting Emma called for the next morning was her final attempt to salvage control of a situation that was spiraling beyond her ability to manage. She had convinced the 3 external board members to gather at Morrison Family Enterprises headquarters for what she described as a critical decision about the company's future. I arrived to find Emma standing at the head of the conference table with a presentation prepared on her laptop, looking more composed than she had seemed during her midnight visit to my apartment. She had clearly spent the early morning hours planning her last-ditch strategy to maintain control of the narrative. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Emma began with forced confidence. "Recent family conflicts have created urgent threats to Morrison Family Enterprises' stability, and we need to take decisive action to protect the business and our employees." Emma's opening argument focused on challenging the evidence against her. She claimed that any recordings of her conversations were illegally obtained and inadmissible in both legal proceedings and business decisions. She presented forged medical documents suggesting that Harold's judgment was compromised by medication and recovery stress, making his recent statements unreliable. "My father is clearly not in a condition to make rational business decisions," Emma argued. "The stress of family conflict has affected his cognitive abilities, as confirmed by his medical team. Any documents or statements made under these circumstances should be considered invalid." Emma demanded that the board declare her permanent CEO and approve the Mega Home Corp sale immediately before family drama could further damage the company's reputation. She threatened to expose embarrassing details about board members' personal investments and business relationships if they didn't support her position. But Emma's intimidation tactics backfired spectacularly when the board members revealed they had been conducting their own investigation of her activities. Robert Williams, the board chairman and Harold's longtime friend, stood up with a folder of documents that Emma had never seen before. "Emma, we appreciate your passion for the business," Robert said carefully, "but we've discovered some concerning inconsistencies in your financial reporting and business development activities." The board had hired an independent auditor to review Morrison Family Enterprises' financial records after noticing irregularities in Emma's quarterly reports. The auditor had discovered the diverted funds, unauthorized expense accounts, and hidden subsidiary companies that Emma had created to siphon company assets. Even more damaging, the board's investigation revealed that Emma's secret meetings with Bradley Hutchinson violated her fiduciary duties as an officer of Morrison Family Enterprises. Corporate law required her to disclose any negotiations with potential acquirers and ensure that any sale process served the company's best interests rather than personal gain. "The external auditor you recommended actually reports directly to your father," Robert explained. "Harold suspected potential problems months ago and asked us to monitor the situation discreetly." Emma's face went pale as she realized that Harold had been several steps ahead of her throughout the entire process. The auditor she thought was supporting her position had actually been documenting her violations of corporate governance and fiduciary responsibility. I then presented my complete business plan for Morrison 2.0, backed by Harold's full support and documented client commitments. The presentation included letters of intent from 10 major commercial clients representing over 60% of Morrison's annual revenue. These clients had expressed frustration with Emma's standardized service approach and were eager to work with a company that prioritized customized solutions and personal relationships. The supplier agreements I had negotiated personally ensured that Morrison 2.0 would have access to inventory sources and pricing advantages that Emma's version of Morrison Family Enterprises could no longer access. Without these relationships, Mega Home Corp would be purchasing a business framework without the operational capacity to serve existing clients effectively. I'm prepared to purchase Morrison Family Enterprises from Emma for its actual debt value. I offered, which would allow the family name to continue while protecting our employees and client relationships. This proposal would give Emma a way to exit the situation with minimal financial loss, while preserving the business legacy our family had built over 4 decades. But Emma's pride and desperation drove her to reject any compromise that didn't result in her original financial windfall. That was when Bradley Hutchinson arrived unexpectedly, having driven down from Seattle after learning about the warehouse and supplier relationship issues. His presence transformed the meeting from a family dispute into a corporate crisis management session. "Ms. Morrison." Bradley addressed Emma with cold professionalism. Mega Home Corporation is withdrawing our purchase offer due to material misrepresentation of assets and operational capabilities. Bradley had discovered that the business Emma was selling didn't include the physical infrastructure supplier relationships or employee expertise that made Morrison Family Enterprises valuable. He was particularly angry about the time and resources Mega Home Corp had invested in due diligence based on Emma's misleading representations. Your consulting agreement is voided due to breach of representation warranties, Bradley continued. We'll be seeking recovery of advance payments and considering legal action for fraudulent business practices. Emma's final desperate move was to threaten complete destruction of Morrison's reputation and client relationships. If I can't have the business, nobody can, she declared. I'll release all client information to competitors and destroy Morrison's reputation permanently. But this threat revealed that Emma had never understood what made Morrison Family Enterprises successful. The business had never been about proprietary information or exclusive systems. It had been built on trust, personal relationships, and a commitment to serving clients' specific needs better than larger competitors. Emma. I said quietly, you can release whatever information you want. Our clients don't work with Morrison because of secret processes or exclusive data. They work with us because of relationships built over years of honest service and mutual respect. The board members looked at Emma with disappointment and disgust as they realized how completely she had misunderstood the business she was trying to destroy. Her threats had revealed a fundamental contempt for the values and relationships that made Morrison Family Enterprises worth preserving. 6 months later, I stood in the headquarters of Morrison Family Enterprises 2.0, watching our employees celebrate the successful completion of our largest contract to date. The new building was smaller than our previous facility, but it was designed specifically to support the collaborative management style and client-focused service approach that had always been our greatest strength. Emma faced multiple consequences for her actions that served as a comprehensive lesson in business ethics. The district attorney filed criminal charges for embezzlement and corporate fraud based on the financial evidence our investigation had uncovered. She was required to pay restitution for the diverted company funds and face potential imprisonment if convicted. The State Business Commission banned Emma from serving in any executive capacity for 5 years due to her violations of fiduciary duty and fraudulent misrepresentation of corporate assets. Her Stanford MBA program expelled her retroactively after learning about the forged documents and false financial reports she had submitted as case study examples. Bradley Hutchinson and Mega Home Corporation publicly distanced themselves from Emma's activities and filed a civil lawsuit seeking damages for time and resources wasted on fraudulent acquisition negotiations. The business press coverage of Emma's scheme destroyed her reputation in the corporate community and made her unemployable in any management position. But the most satisfying justice was the contrast between Emma's destruction and Morrison Family Enterprises 2.0's thriving success. Harold made a complete recovery from his health crisis, strengthened by the knowledge that the family business was in trustworthy hands and guided by principles he had instilled throughout my upbringing. Our father became chairman emeritus of Morrison 2.0, finally able to enjoy his retirement while watching the business grow under leadership that prioritized relationships and integrity over pure profit maximization. The stress that had triggered his heart problems disappeared when he realized the family legacy was secure and growing stronger than ever. Harold and I rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect and shared values that had been tested by crisis and proven unbreakable. He publicly acknowledged my vision and leadership abilities, expressing regret for the years when he had taken my contributions for granted, while hoping Emma's academic credentials would somehow enhance what I had already built through experience and dedication. Morrison Family Enterprises 2.0 grew beyond our most optimistic projections within 6 months. Employee loyalty and client satisfaction reached record levels under our collaborative management approach that valued input from everyone involved in daily operations. We implemented profit-sharing programs and employee ownership opportunities that gave our team genuine investment in the company's success. The business culture we created emphasized family values and ethical practices while maintaining the competitive advantages that had made the original Morrison family enterprises successful. Our employees felt genuinely valued and supported, leading to innovation and customer service excellence that set new industry standards. Personally, I learned to trust my instincts and leadership abilities completely after years of second-guessing myself in the shadow of Emma's academic achievements. I developed systems to prevent future family business conflicts through clear documentation, external oversight, and transparent communication about roles and expectations. I also created mentorship programs for other family businesses facing succession challenges, sharing the lessons I had learned about protecting business relationships and company culture during ownership transitions. These programs connected me with entrepreneurs throughout the Pacific Northwest who shared similar values about business ethics and community responsibility. The most unexpected development was Emma's eventual transformation. After facing bankruptcy, social isolation, and the complete collapse of her manipulative strategies, she reached out 6 months after her criminal conviction with a genuine apology for her actions. Emma had spent her time in community service and court-mandated counseling reflecting on how her ambition had corrupted her judgment and destroyed relationships with the people who had supported her throughout her life. She expressed sincere remorse for the pain she had caused our father and the damage she had inflicted on the business I had built. I offered Emma an entry-level position at Morrison 2.0 with strict oversight and accountability measures that would allow her to prove her commitment to honest work and ethical behavior. The position required her to start from the bottom, learning the business through the same hands-on experience that had shaped my understanding of what made our company successful. Emma accepted the opportunity with humility and determination to earn back the trust she had destroyed through her deception and manipulation. Her transformation wasn't immediate or easy, but over months of consistent effort and genuine accountability, she began rebuilding relationships based on honesty rather than strategic positioning. The process of working together again taught both of us valuable lessons about family dynamics, business ethics, and the difference between healthy competition and destructive ambition. Emma learned to appreciate the relationship-building approach she had previously dismissed as inefficient, while I learned to incorporate some analytical methods that improved our operational efficiency without sacrificing our personal service philosophy. Our father watched this reconciliation with deep satisfaction, knowing that both his daughters had finally found ways to contribute to the family legacy that honored the values he had tried to instill throughout our upbringing. The crisis that had nearly destroyed our family ultimately made us stronger and more committed to supporting each other's growth and success. Looking back on that moment when Emma fired me from the company I had built, I realized that her betrayal had actually been a gift in disguise. It forced me to build something better and more sustainable than what we had before. It taught me that true leadership isn't about controlling others or protecting yourself from competition, but about creating value for everyone around you and building systems that survive individual ambitions and conflicts. The laughter that had bubbled up during Emma's termination announcement came from a deep understanding that integrity and preparation always triumph over manipulation and shortcuts. When people try to destroy what you've built through deception and exploitation, the relationships and values you've cultivated will carry you to something even better than what you started with. Morrison Family Enterprises 2.0 became more than just a successful business. It became a demonstration that ethical leadership, authentic relationships, and commitment to shared values create foundations that can't be destroyed by individual greed or family conflicts. We proved that doing the right thing isn't just morally satisfying, it's also the most effective long-term business strategy. Sometimes the greatest betrayals become the greatest opportunities for growth and success. When family members try to destroy what you've built, the strength and relationships you've cultivated will show you possibilities you never imagined. Trust in your own abilities and values, because those who truly understand your worth will stand with you when others try to tear you down. I learned that revenge isn't about destroying those who hurt you, but about building something so successful and meaningful that their actions become irrelevant. Emma's attempt to steal my life's work led to creating something better than what existed before, proving that authentic success can't be taken away by anyone else's ambition or deception. The morning after Emma fired me was indeed fun because it marked the beginning of a journey that led to more satisfaction, success, and family harmony than I had ever thought possible. Sometimes losing everything you think you want is the first step toward gaining everything you actually need. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone's betrayal actually led to better opportunities than you had before? I'd love to hear about moments when family or workplace conflicts pushed you toward positive changes you wouldn't have made otherwise. Please share your experiences in the comments below, and let's support each other through these challenging but ultimately transformative situations. If this story resonated with you or reminded you of your own experiences with family business challenges, please like this video to help other people find these stories when they need encouragement. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories about overcoming betrayal and building success through integrity and determination. And please share this story with anyone you know who might be facing similar challenges with family members or workplace dynamics. Sometimes knowing that others have survived and thrived after devastating betrayals can provide the hope and inspiration needed to keep moving forward. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of a community that believes in the power of honesty, hard work, and authentic relationships. I hope your own journey leads to discoveries about your strength and capabilities that surprise you in the best possible ways.